In this video, I'll give you 3 simple tips to master the center mid position. This position is probably the hardest one to play positionally. So I will try to simplify this position as much as I can. You need discipline, you need experience, and you need exceptional amount of game knowledge. Tip number 1 is defending as a center mid. Your job is not very straightforward. You have to be floating and you have to be covering the gaps. Not how you can win the ball, but what gaps do you need to cover. So you need to know positionally where to be so you can be a great defender as a central midfielder. Because your main goal as a central midfielder to not allow the ball go through the central channel. So your job is to close and block those central channels. So basically you need to do everything you can to not allow the ball go in behind you. If the ball goes in behind you and find the opposition's attacking midfielder or their striker, I don't think you did your job well. If they play long, that's okay. Of course, that's not on you, but most likely if the ball is being passed on the ground and if it breaks through you, now you failed your job as a central midfielder. First of all, you need to focus on where your winger is, where your striker is, and where your attacking midfielder is. Because you're gonna need to know the gaps that they left open. Because ideally, your winger will be wide, but shifting in when it comes to covering the central channels, and your attacking midfielder will be tucking in. So you're gonna need to be right in between your winger and attacking midfielder and covering those gaps that they left behind. You're not really in a straight line with them, but you are dropping in behind them, so not allowing the ball to go through the central channel. And this is exactly when your job gets kind of complicated, because you're gonna need to be floating. Your attacking midfielder, your winger will not always be where they're supposed to be, so it's your job to kind of control their move as well as your own move to actually be at the right place at the right time. Where do you think the opposition will be having the most numbers, most players? Central channel, right? So ideally, any team wants to break the central pressure. Any team will want to go through the middle if they can. They progress the game from the middle. It's your job to not let this happen. So that's why it gets very complicated, because you're gonna need to put the right amount of pressure, the perfect pressure, so the opposition can't find those middle channels where now you did your job if the opposition goes wide. Because the wide side of the field, the teams are least dangerous, but central areas, any team is the most dangerous. Better you can do this, better you can close the central channels, your job gets a lot easier because you don't have to track back as intense. If the ball goes wide, now you are dropping back, but slowly. Tip number 2 is playing under pressure. This is probably one of the most challenging things when it comes to playing football. Playing under pressure, it's hard. Playing under pressure means that you can't do what you want to do because you have too much pressure on. But what do you need to do to actually eliminate this? Ideally, yes, you need to know how to play under pressure and you need to be really good at it, but at the same time, more importantly, that you have to know how to come out of the pressure. So you need to float, you need to find the gaps, you need to sometimes drop deep to receive the ball and distribute the game from there, or sometimes go wide a little bit and then get the ball there, because you're gonna have less pressure if you go wide side of the field. So you're gonna need to float and you're gonna find these gaps and be very creative, so you got yourself in the position where you're not under so much pressure. So my most important suggestion to you when it comes to playing under pressure is not to learn so much of playing under pressure. You learning how to play under pressure means that you're gonna put yourself in the zones where you are under pressure. You will not be able to turn comfortably, you'll not be able to control the ball comfortably and just play simple instead of being very creative. So you're gonna have to drop deep, find the gaps, receive, and distribute. Most likely, any formation, you're gonna play with either a CM partner or a CDM partner. So this makes your job a bit easier, of course, because one of the CM or CDM would be floating, pulls the pressure to themselves, where it makes the other CM drop deep and receive the ball, gets them away from the pressure. So most likely the one that drops receive the ball. But if the one that drops gets the pressure, now it opens up a space for the other CM to receive the ball. And this is the idea of floating, moving around and not being stationary, because you cannot be stationary as a central midfielder, otherwise you will be under pressure, because you're gonna be one of those players that are really easy to mark. And the tip number 3 is distributing the play. It's very important that you know how to distribute the play as a central midfielder, because you are basically the brain of the team. So you're gonna receive the ball more than most of the positions on the pitch. So you're gonna have the ball and you're gonna lift your head up and you're gonna look around and you're gonna play the ball to someone on your team. But what is the best way to distribute the game as a central midfielder? So first of all, to be able to be a good distributor on the pitch, you need to know exactly how to come out of the pressure. So you can receive the ball, you can turn, and then you can distribute the game. That's your first step. And your distributing style most likely will depend on how your team plays generally, because some coaches like their team playing long balls, some coaches like tiki-taka, some coaches really short but simple and direct, or go backwards and not rush your attacks. It all depends on what your coach expects from your team. As a central midfielder, yes, you need to be direct. If you're always passing backwards, now you're not creating anything and you're not progressing the game forward. So ideally, yes, you need to progress the game forward. But it's also important that you don't rush things. You rushing things means that if you straight away went to your striker, now your striker has no support, so now you're not outnumbering the opposition. If you first of all find your attacking midfielder maybe, or your winger, and slowly progressing, then you're inviting more of your teammates up to support your striker, and your team has better chance of scoring. If you rushed right away, that's not good. So you gotta have to find the perfect medium where you're gonna need to play simple, play direct, but not rush at the same time. But of course, this will change a little bit if the last 10-15 minutes of the game and you have to score. Now, yes, you're gonna have to be in a more rushing mode where you're gonna need to get to the opposition's net quicker. Now you can look for options to send even longer balls and create games in behind the opposition's fullback or their center back right away. This kind of comes with experience, and that's why I said at the beginning where experience is incredibly important to play this position and master this position. So distributing the game, stay calm unless you have to rush it, and also possession. Possession is important. So your team has to keep the ball. If your team doesn't keep the ball a lot, now what happens is now you lost the ball, opposition counterattacks, now you have to run more. So basically by rushing, what you do is you're making your job a lot harder, because now you have to run a lot more and you use a lot more energy, and now you can't really play the way that you want to play. I said this in many of my other videos where you're gonna need to focus on watching the teams that are not very good playing against really good teams. As a CM, there will be teams that you're playing against that are gonna be really good, way better than your team. You have to learn both. You have to learn how to play with a good team. You have to learn how to play with an average team. It will give you clues what you need to do when the opposition is dominating. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please drop a like and subscribe to my channel with the notifications on. You can also find my playlist right over here. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.